Special shout out to my Patreon for this one. I ran a poll a couple days ago and asked you guys what topic you would like me to cover, and this one. If you want to be included in these kind of polls next time, or get videos before I release them publicly, or even get entered into special giveaways, hit the link in the description. Thanks again. Our story begins in the development stages of EPCOT Center. Imagineers wanted a central hub in the middle of Future World. They also wanted it to be Future World's global main street of ideas and inventions. The pavilion in the hub would be called CommuniCore, short for CommuniCore. CommuniCore would be separated into two different buildings, CommuniCore East and CommuniCore West. CommuniCore would house a bunch of exhibits that showed the future of technology. The building would also have a people mover system that connected the two buildings that would make traveling between them a lot easier. This plan would even make the construction phase, as the main hallway ceiling is so high, but the plan would eventually be scrapped. The buildings were constructed with the idea that they would eventually be expanded for new exhibits. Small expansions and changes did happen to the buildings during the initial construction. Originally, the Odyssey restaurant was supposed to be located in the corner of CommuniCore East, but because of the large sinkhole in that area, the restaurant had to be moved. The Sunrise Terrace restaurant was also expanded during construction. The Centurium shop was expanded during a 1987 renovation. CommuniCore opened with the rest of EPCOT Center on October 1st, 1982. CommuniCore East holds the most well-known exhibits such as Travelport, Future Choice Theater, Energy Exchange, Get Set Jet, Pulling It All Together, and the Computer Central, where some of the computers that ran the park could be seen. A show called A Student Computer Review took place in the Computer Central, and starred Early the Pearly. He sang about how computers ran Epcot, and about how computers might change the life in the future. Not much was known about this attraction for a long time. There is only one publicly available video of this show, and one audio recording of it.
I need 5 arms and an extra head. I find the computer becomes me troubleshooter. He keeps miles and miles of facts on file. My wish is his command. Nothing is astuter than a computer when I need a helping hand. Let me explain. Keep on top of accommodations, record and update reservations, coordinate telephone operations, and help plan energy conservation. They're really a great financial device. Payroll service is kept precise. They protect attendants and give advice on personnel, food, and merchandise. They're constantly focusing all their attention on matters of safety and fire prevention. They've given efficiency new dimension with numerous examples too many to mention. And that's why I'm a router for me computer. Everybody needs a friend.
The Student Computer Review ran from 1982 to 1984. After that, the computer room stayed open because a new show called Backstage Magic opened soon after A Student Computer Review closed. This new show was hosted by a new character named Julie and taught people about computers again. Another well-known part of CommuniCore East was Smart One. Smart One served as CommuniCore's unofficial mascot. He was the animatronic that showed voice recognition technology. People were able to talk to him through telephones close to the station where he was at. Smart One is so popular that he has had merchandise made. That merch has also sold quite well. Over in CommuniCore West, it housed an information station called EPCOT Discovery Center. Expo Robotics, which also showed robotic arms doing tasks. The main exhibits were called FutureCom and included the Age of Information, a small animatronic show, and the Intelligent Network map, a map that was interactive. These exhibits would need to be updated as new technology was always evolving and there were small updates. But eventually, there came a time where CommuniCore needed to be fully updated. And with the new CEO, Michael Eisner, at the head of management, this change was made. CommuniCore closed in 1984 to make way for Innoventions. After this closure, its robot mascot, Smart One, was moved to the Contemporary Resort. Innoventions opened in September 1994. It opened in 2 phases due to the size of the update. The first phase was going to open in 1993/1994, the second phase in 1998/1999. Michael Eisner wanted Innoventions to represent a tech expo or World's Fair for new technology. So when Innoventions East opened, the exhibits included new tech from General Motors, Apple, General Electric, Hammacher Schmidler, which is a retail company that sells unique products. The shows in Innoventions East included Magic House Tour, which was hosted by a cast member, and a puppet rabbit voiced by Matt Frewer, who's most well known by voicing Max Headroom. Innoventions West had a Sega exhibit, since at-home video games were still new in 1994. Guests could demo some of the games. A Lego building station, IBM, which is a computer hardware company, AT&T, and Discovery Magazine also held exhibits in Innoventions West. Bill Nye the Science Guy had a show. The show was on a screen and had Bill Nye teaching guests about different scientists. This show moved to Innoventions East in April 1999. Videonics showed home editing. This show moved over to Innoventions East in April 1998. Electronics showed how audio animatronics work and was hosted by Electronic, Bear Animatronic. Back over in Innoventions East, House of Innoventions replaced the Magic House Tour. This house showed future home technologies. Innoventions West started showing VR tech in 1996, and Aladdin's Magic Carpet Ride demonstrated the possibilities of VR attractions. This prototype eventually opened in Disney Quest as a full attraction. In Disneyland, they were getting ready to overhaul their Tomorrowland. This plan, called Tomorrowland 2055, was going to have an attraction in the old Carousel of Progress building. Budget cuts did its damage to these plans, and eventually the attraction was cancelled. So instead, they brought over Innoventions from EPCOT. The theater would be converted into an expo hall, and some of the exhibits over the years included a General Motors simulator attraction, computer games, VR vacation, different stations that promoted healthy living, Talk to Stitch, which was an attraction similar to Turtle Talk with Crush, and a home that guests could see and interact with. The unofficial mascot of Innoventions would be Tom Morrow, an animatronic that looked a lot like the Timekeeper from Magic Kingdom. He was in Disneyland's Innoventions and showed off different tech. He was voiced by Nathan Lane. He was unfortunately removed in 2012. Back in 1999, EPCOT started its Millennium Celebration, and because of this, Innoventions went through its first renovation. Its name was changed to Innoventions: The Road to Tomorrow. This name was eventually changed back to just Innoventions. First exhibits to open were Forest for Our Future, Disney.com's Internet Zone. The House of Innoventions remained open, but swapped sponsors over the years. Innoventions West included Networked Living, Ultimate Home Theater Experience, Beautiful Science, Video Games of Tomorrow, Medicine's New Vision. After the initial opening, exhibits came and went. Innoventions at EPCOT got its mascot in 2000. Tom Morrow 2.0 made his debut at Innoventions West. He was a small animatronic and the host of Innoventions. He hung out near the entrance. Even though he was popular with fans of Innoventions, he was removed in 2007. Disney continued to open exhibits up at different times in both East and West. Like in 2001, a preview for Mission Space opened in East. And KidCot, a play area for kids, opened in 2004. And Don't Waste It opened in 2008. Over in West, Where's the Fire opened. It was a game that promoted fire safety. You would have different rooms of a house in front of you, and you would have to touch the screen to get rid of fire hazards. This opened in 2004. In 2008, Stormstruck opened in East. This was a 4D movie that simulated being in a house during a hurricane. The next year, in 2009, Summer All Thrills opened. This was the #1 exhibit in Innoventions when it was open. You could design a roller coaster and then test what it was like on their simulator. Pretty cool stuff. In West, the Great Piggy Bank Adventure opened in 2008. This was a digital game that taught guests about saving, investing, and planning money. Sometime around 2005, the EPCOT Character Spot opened in Innoventions West. This was strange because there was nothing like this before, and the meet and greet had nothing to do with the future or Innoventions. Later, the Great Piggy Bank Adventure and Where's the Fire were closed on April 29, 2012. More attractions would open in East, like Vision House, which was an updated version of the House of Innoventions. But it would close in 2015 to make way for Colortopia. Colortopia was an interactive game where guests could discover the magic of color. It took place in 3 parts: Power of Color Theater, which is how the attraction started, and it introduced how we see colors and the emotions connected to them. Then the Color Lab, which allowed guests to experiment with mixing colors. And finally, Color Our World, which allowed guests to take paintbrushes and paint the illustrations on screen. In 2015, Innoventions over in Disneyland closed, and on May 19, 2015, Innoventions West closed its doors with a promise that it would receive an overhaul. That overhaul never happened. On September 14, 2016, Storm struck and some of all thrills closed. They were not replaced or demolished. Instead, they were walled off poorly and left untouched. Some people were even able to go back to the old simulators and grab a couple cards from Summerall Thrills. The Spectral Lab opened in East on November 12, 2017. It was an interactive show that was hosted by real scientists and did science experiments on stage with audience members. This was the last exhibit to open in Innoventions. The Spectral Lab had its final show on January 13, 2019. With Innoventions not having much to do, it was looking very likely that it would be closing altogether, and on July 2nd, 2019, Disney announced that all of Innoventions would be closing on September 8th, 2019. During D23 of that year, the full EPCOT overhaul was announced, and with that announcement, the concept art showed Innoventions West would be completely demolished. On September 8th, 2019, Innoventions closed its doors. A group of fans came to EPCOT that day to send off their favorite attractions. With the demolition of Innoventions West, this would mean the CommuniCore hallway, as some called it, would be torn down as well. Some fans paid their respects and ended their day in this hallway. This story does not end on a sad note, because earlier in 2022, Disney announced the plaza that CommuniCore and Innoventions once stood will now be called CommuniCore Hall and CommuniCore Plaza. As of right now, if you go to EPCOT, as a matter of fact, Innoventions West is being torn down very slowly. You can see the skeleton of the building. It's pretty depressing, but the hall and plaza will be opening soon. Hopefully. I mean, they gave us new updates on it, so that's a good sign. Innoventions was something that I did as a kid, and I have to admit, I didn't like it all that much because I was 3 and 5 when I did it, so not the best thing for a 3 and 5-year-old to be doing, because 3 and 5-year-olds don't like to be taught. Like, they find education stuff like that boring, but I wish I would have went back to it when I was older, because I feel like Summerall Thrills I would have loved. And just some of these sound really, really cool. So, yes, I understand the big, the love of it that fans had. And the group that went to Innoventions on its very last day are true Innoventions fans, and respect to them. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and consider subscribing. It would make me a very happy man. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Have a magical day, everybody.